The best family film of all time, Salo, or The 120 Days of Sodom, is often considered to be one of the most disturbing and controversial films of all time. Released in 1975, just 3 weeks after the murder of the film's director, Piero Pasolini, the film would get banned in multiple countries or edited for content in order to be rated and released. To give a brief summary of the film, in 1944, at the Republic of Salo during Benito Mussolini's final days of control of Italy during World War II, 4 libertines, the Duke, the Bishop, the Magistrate, and the President, agree to marry each other's daughters. They then proceed to kidnap 4 male teens in order to serve as guards, and 4 other male teen soldiers are recruited because of their large, cocks. The 4 male guards are fitted with fascist Italian uniforms. With the help of the army and the secret police, the libertines kidnap 9 male teens and 9 female teens. However, one of the male teens tries to escape but is shot dead. The libertines bring their daughters and victims to their castle and rape, torture, physically abuse, mentally abuse, and sexually abuse, including coprophilia, them for 4 months till the final day where they are tortured and brutally killed. The studs are just as sadistic as the libertines, with the guards also being just as sadistic as the studs, except for one which I'll talk about later. They also allow servants to be in the castle, but are mostly unseen throughout the film as they are not to partake in the torture and orgies. The remaining 4 allowed in the castle are the storytellers, who are prostitutes. During each day, a prostitute tells stories with as much detail as possible, trust me, about their experiences as a prostitute. These stories include murder, torture, sodomy, rape, child sex abuse, coprophilia, and much more. One of the storytellers actually never tells a story, but is mainly because she is there to play the piano while each storyteller tells their tales of depravity. Now, this film is based on the book The 120 Days of Sodom, or The School of Libertinage, by the infamous Marquis de Sade. Marquis de Sade was a French writer and nobleman during the mid to late 1700s and the early 1800s, but he was also a real jerk. During his life, he would enjoy committing adultery, sexually assaulting women, rape, kidnapping, and molesting children, BDSM, and the list goes on, as he was a very depraved and horny man. He wrote The 120 Days of Sodom over a period of 37 days in 1785 while he was imprisoned in Bastille for his sex crimes. What is funny is he did not have any proper writing material, so he had to write the manuscript on a roll of paper that was smuggled smaller pieces of paper glued together. The Holy Scroll of Filth was in total 12 meters long and 12 centimeters wide, which he kept in his cell walls in order to avoid confiscation. During his imprisonment, Sade, being the crazy bastard that he is, would eventually start a riot between the people outside of Bastille by shouting out from his window that the guards were murdering inmates. Why his cell had a window is beyond me. Because of this behavior, 2 days later, Salo was transferred to an asylum at Charenton, where he did not have the opportunity to retrieve his novel. A couple of days after he was transferred, Bastille was stormed and looted at the beginning of the French Revolution, and Sade turned sad and said he wept tears of blood. Even a depraved man has his limits, I guess. However, Sade never knew that a citizen would find and take the manuscript before the storming, therefore preserving the pornographic roll of toilet paper. Now, what is the book about, you ask? Well, it is very similar in concept to the film, but shares many differences. For instance, the film is much tamer than Sade's paper roll, which is a wild thing to say considering how disturbing the film is. The book is set at the end of the reign of Louis XIV. It involves 4 libertines, 4 storytellers, no pianist, the studs or accomplices, the servants, daughters, and the victims. Now, it is worth noting that the book is divided into 4 parts with an introduction, each part getting considerably worse and more depraved. The film takes inspiration from Dante's Divine Comedy and how it divides itself. Similar concept to how disturbing and sadistic things get as the film continues, but the 4 parts are entitled E Antiferno, Circle of Manias, I can't pronounce that, I'm dumb, Circle of Shit, and Circle of Blood. It is worth noting that Pier Pasolini, when writing the script with his collaborators, introduced the concept of adding the elements from Dante's Divine Comedy and mentioned that he believed that if Sade had finished his novel, that he would have done the same. Yes, Sade never finished the book. So after the first part, if you're still reading, because goddamn is it disturbing, it just goes into notes of extreme, and I mean really extreme, sexual depravity. If you can think it, it's mentioned. Whatever depravity, Sade cooked it in his cell under 37 days on a toilet paper roll. And I mean it when no details are spared on how disturbing it gets. You know, after reading the first part, it kind of reads like the joke of the aristocrats. If you don't know that joke, I highly recommend checking out the documentary, or at the very least checking out Gilbert Gottfried's rendition of it during the roast of Hugh Hefner. To keep it brief, the joke is sorta an inside joke between comedians, or a secret handshake. Essentially, the joke is not the punchline, but the joke is trying to make the other laugh of how depraved and obscure the person can tell it. The joke is about a family trying to get an agent to book their stage act, so they go to the agent and the agent asks if he can see the act. The family then agrees and does the act, which is ad-libbed by the comedian, and entails all sorts of depravity such as bestiality, child sexual abuse, cannibalism, incest, animal cruelty, necrophilia, murder, rape, etc. When the family finishes the act, the agent is disturbed, outraged, frightened, and asks, "What do you call this act?" To which one of the family members answers, "The aristocrats." So there you go. A quick summary of the book that I don't ever want to finish. I really don't recommend this book as it's just pornography with a bit of comedy elements, but it just reads as someone trying to be edgy, but in this case is written by a rapist and pedophile. So let's move on and look at the controversy surrounding the film instead. Now, I do not need to tell you why this film garnered so much controversy in 1975, because doo-doo, rape, murder. But I need to state just how soul draining and disturbing it is to watch Salo. Even to rewatch for this video, so it is safe to say that the film still remains controversial today, and the initial release reaction is not an exaggeration. What's important to mention first is that Pasolini was murdered 3 weeks before the film's premiere. At the time, he was working on the French dub of the film, as he thought the film was meant to be in French, as Marquise de Sade was French. Now, if you ask Pasolini's collaborators and friends if his murder was solved, they would say no, and detail that he was murdered for his view and or his film. He was murdered on November 2nd, 1975 at a beach in Ostia. Pasolini was beaten, run over several times with his own car, his testicles were crushed by what appeared to have been a metal bar, and his body had been partially burned with gasoline after his death. You can find photos of the crime scene online and on one of the special features on the Criterion Blu-ray. A 17-year-old, I'm gonna butcher this, Giuseppe Pelosi was convicted to the murder and said Pasolini tried to sodomize him. It's worth noting that unknown others, quote-unquote, were mentioned to also have something to do with the murder. Pelosi initially admitted to the murder and was sentenced to 9 years in prison. However, would later say in 2005 that he was threatened to confess by 3 men who he claims insulted Pasolini as a dirty communist. Pasolini had a well-known hatred to fascism. Famously, there is a photo of him punching a fascist in 1962, and as shown in Salo with the anti-fascist themes. Interestingly, Sergio Citi, one of the writers of Salo, would launch his own investigation into the murder, as some of the film rolls from Salo were stolen and used as ransom. Citi would then find a new eyewitness who said he saw Pasolini being pulled by a group into a car and finding a bloody wooden stick. Yet, the evidence was insufficient to reopen the case. However, in 2023, Pasolini's collaborator and another Italian director want the case to be reopened, as DNA from the scene was found to be linked to the murder, and a former member of the Banda della Maggiatini, I butchered that, a criminal organization in Italy at the time that had close ties to far-right groups, claimed that the group was behind the murder. So the most believed theory of what happened is that reels from the film were stolen and Pasolini went to pay the ransom but was murdered instead. As of making this video, the case has yet to be reopened despite an online petition. The film premiered at the Paris Film Festival on November 25th, 1975, where Pasolini's friends and collaborators went to discuss the meaning of the film and Pasolini's death, but were not allowed to. The film was initially rejected to be screened initially in Italy, but was later approved on December 23rd, 1975, but was banned in Italy on January 1976, only 3 weeks after premiering in Italy. The film was rejected and banned from UK in 1976, Famously, the film was shown uncut and uncertified at the Old Compton Street Cinema Club in Soho, London on 1977, but was raided a few days later by the police. It wasn't until 2000 that the film would be approved to be shown theatrically in the UK. The film was banned in Canada, but not in the good old USA. However, in 1994 in Cincinnati, an undercover police officer rented the film from a gay bookstore and arrested the owners on pandering. Actors and directors such as Martin Scorsese and Alec Baldwin signed a legal brief arguing that the film had artistic merit. The case was later dismissed on violation of the owner's Fourth Amendment rights. The film was banned in Australia for 17 years until the Australian Certification Board passed the film uncut for theatrical release in July of 1993. However, the Australian Certification Review Board overturned the decision in February 1998 and the film was banned. It wasn't until 2010 that the DVD release was approved for release because the DVD contained 176 minutes of additional material which provided context to the feature film. It is worth noting that the only reason the film got approved with an R18 plus rating was because of the extra material, and a screening of the film without this extra material would be illegal. A couple of groups such as Family Voice Australia, the Australian Christian Lobby, and Senator Julian McGauran have tried to ban the film again, but with no success. So, fuck you censorship losers. In New Zealand, the film was banned in 1976 but was allowed to be screened uncut at a film festival in 1997 before being passed uncut with an R18 rating for the DVD release in 2001. Disturbingly enough, on January 26, 1979, Akiyoshi Umekawa would attempt to rob a bank and in the process killing 4 people as well as keeping 40 hostages who he tortured and injured in Japan. He would make the women take off their clothes and form a human shield around him and ask the hostages if any of them have seen the film Salo, which is probably way down at the bottom of the list of films your captor should be mentioning. He would then not let any of the hostages use the bathroom, instead make them go behind a counter, so it must have smelled terrible considering the bodies in the room and the shit and piss. Umekawa who previously killed a woman in 1963, by the way, would then shoot the bravest and calmest male captive and force another captive to cut his ear off to make sure he's dead. He is quoted saying, "If that's the case, cut off his ear. In the movie Salo, they cut off the ears of the dead. It's a ritual, and I will show you the farthest depths of terror." Just to clarify, the film Salo has no ear removal scenes, so he was tripping. Luckily, the man that was shot was still alive, and when the other captive hesitated to cut his ear off, he gave the pass for him to cut his ear off. What a guy, honestly. Umekawa would then grab the ear and begin to chew on it. He then would spit it out. Luckily, the man that was shot survived the ordeal, and the robber was taken out by the police when he dozed off, and the hostages managed to signal the police that he was asleep. So, is Salo a good film? Well, I certainly think so. Masterpiece? I wouldn't say that, but a great important film, I say. According to one of the actresses of the film, I'm completely spacing out her name, but I think she played the part of one of the daughters, said it best. The first time you watch Salo, all you feel is disgust and shock. However, when you watch it again, you begin to see the real message as the initial shock is gone. I agree with her, as I watched Salo originally in the 7th grade, probably the wrong age to watch it, but whatever, and I really only focused on the disturbing aspects of the film as compared to my second watch, where I noticed what the film was actually trying to convey. Unlike the book, Pasolini actually implemented a very important warning in the film. Salo is a horror film. Pasolini hated fascists, but he also hated the people in power of his time. World War II only ended about 30 years after the film's release, and there was still the possibility of fascists coming back to power and returning the country or the continent back to that terrible time of war. In one of the special features of the Criterion release of the film, an actress stated that in the same year of the film's release, neo-Nazis marched in Paris while many civilians applauded them. There was always a fear that they would regain power. Speaking of power, Pasolini states that the sex of the film is a metaphor for the relationship between power and its subjects. It's meant to show what power does to the human body and how it reduces the human body to a commodity. Nothing is in more anarchy than power. Power can essentially do what it wants, and what it wants is completely arbitrary or dictated by its economic needs that elude common logic. Man is born to conform to whatever power, and man will never truly be free. Hope is created by political higher-ups to keep their members in line. The power complex clearly is shown by the four libertines doing as they please to their victims without any repercussions because of their status, but it is also shown with the studs and the guards. As mentioned, the guards are pretty much kidnapped just as the prisoners, and the studs are chosen because of their large cocks. Once they get this power of keeping the victims in line, they also abuse their power by partaking in the abuse. The studs rape, torture, and verbally insult the victims, while the guards do the same, even though all of them are armed with rifles and can kill the four libertines at any moment but choose not to. Instead, they ass fuck them. No, seriously. Well, except for one guard who in the beginning, when the guards are bringing the daughters to their libertine fathers, a guard verbally abuses them, but the guard named Salo makes sure the daughters know that they are only following orders. Later in the film, the bishop checks the victims while they sleep. A boy victim named Claudio informs the bishop in the hopes of him sparing his life of a girl victim named Grazilia keeping a photo of a boy under her pillow. When the bishop confronts her about the photo, the girl reveals that her friend Eva, who throughout the film both are shown to comfort each other, is having a sexual affair with another girl captive, which is against the rules of the libertines. When discovered having sex by the bishop, Eva tells him that one of the guards, Ezio, is having an affair with a servant. The bishop calls the depraved Avengers together and finds Ezio having sex with the servant. Instead of panicking, Ezio gets up naked and does the closed fist socialist signal when the four point their guns at him. The four stop and admire the rebellion for a couple of seconds, but then proceed to kill the two of them. Really brilliant and beautiful scene if you ask me. To replace the guard, they get one of the boy captives to assume his position, and he becomes corrupted with power and calls the male captives gay slurs, even though he was in their position a couple of scenes ago. The studs help kill the victims in the end, except for Grazilla, who is spared for her betrayal of her friend, and another male victim who is in a homosexual relationship with the Duke. The captive turned guard shows the corruption of power, while the betrayal of the two friends in order for the one that betrayed to be spared in the end shows that life under fascism is more concerned with saving one's own skin rather than thinking of others. In fact, you can see this today in North Korea, where members of families fight each other for food and only see each other as competition or as someone who can cause themselves to be punished rather than someone they love and care for. The final scene has each of the libertines take turns watching from a distance with binoculars the torture and the murder of the victims and their own daughters. As mentioned, the pianist decides to look out the window during the depraved murders and is so sickened by what she sees that she decides to jump from the window and kill herself. Although it is worth noting that she did not partake in the torture, she did play piano during the acts with her back turned, ignoring the horrific acts as they occurred. So I guess murder is her breaking point, which is kind of wild considering she took part in the doo-doo eating. I guess like her character could be like those German World War II prisoners who were shown footage of concentration camps, and only then did they realize what they were actually a part of, as the photograph shows some soldiers covering their eyes, looking ashamed and even weeping. Similarly, in a more modern example, the documentary The Act of Killing has something similar, but I won't spoil it here. I really recommend that documentary, although it's also disturbing, so be warned. Now, the final part of the film is probably the most, I'd say, thought-provoking. While the murders and the torture are happening, two guards decide not to continue watching and turn on the radio. The radio plays the intro song from the intro credits, which, by the way, did you know that Ennio Morricone made the song for the film? Yes, the same Ennio Morricone who made the music for Sergio Leone's Man with No Name Western Trilogy, as well as other notable films. So that adds to the list of beautiful music made by Italians for the most fucked up movies, I guess. Anyways, the radio plays the song and the two guards begin to dance a waltz. One guard asks the other what's the name of his girlfriend back home, and he replies with the name. Then the film ends. I believe this was added to the film to question us, the viewer. These two guards choose to ignore the butchering of the teens, pretend like they did not witness some of the most disturbing and depraved acts, instead choosing to dance and talk about normal things. We do this exact same thing if you really think about it. We view the news and see acts of violence and stories of depravity, and yet we choose to do nothing about it. Some of us even choose not to learn what's happening in the world. How many times have we witnessed a mass shooting and forgot it happened the very next week? This is what the end of the film is trying to convey. We are all accomplices just as much as the guards are. We choose not to do anything about all the messed up and inhumane things that occur. This is how terrible people come to power. And I think that is like a very powerful statement. And with all that, I truly think Salo, or the 120 Days of Sodom, is a great film. Okay, now with all that praise out of the way, I want to talk about an issue I have with the film, or more specifically Pasolini himself. Now, I want to make it clear that I don't know the full story nor cannot find concrete evidence to this. However, it is mentioned online a lot in articles and on Wikipedia that Pasolini was charged with corruption of minors and obscene acts in public space. These minors apparently ranged from ages of 15 and under, and the obscene act was apparently giving each other handjobs in public. It is worth noting that Pasolini did later get acquitted of the charges and that he did have a lot of enemies due to his works and political views at the time. So the charges could have been to attack him, a homosexual anti-fascist artist in Italy. However, what makes me think these allegations are true is the fact that Pasolini met the love of his life, Ninido Davalli, probably butchered that again, who would star in 6 of Pasolini's films when Ninito was just 15 years old. Now, it is very clear that the two did in fact have a romantic and sexual relationship. However, it is not clear when that relationship began. Also, it is worth noting that I'm not entirely sure what the age of consent was in Italy during the time, but I think it's disgusting regardless, and it sounds like grooming by Pasolini as he was much older than Ninido at the time. So that's my issue. The man that co-wrote and directed the script about the corruption of power also used his power to get closer to a minor. You see how the message becomes less stronger because of these allegations and behavior? If these allegations and behavior are true, then that wouldn't mean him and Marquis de Sado would have something in common. It's sort of like watching those eat the rich films, like for example, The Menu, and seeing some rich producer and a director made it, pretty much. So is it bad that I think a movie is great that is made by a potential child molester? The answer is, I say no, as long as you separate the artist from the work. And if you disagree, let me tell you that there are a bunch of films made by some of the worst people imaginable. For some examples, Bryan Singer, director of X-Men 1, 2, Days of Future Past, is a pedophile. The director of Jeepers Creepers is a pedophile. Kevin Spacey, obviously I don't need to explain that, that's pretty recent. Woody Allen groomed his adopted daughter. Harvey Weinstein, again, don't need to explain that. David Bowie molested a girl. Roman Polanski drugged and raped a girl. Actually, side note, look up Roman Polanski petition and see all the celebrities that support a child molester. Like Martin Scorsese's on it, David Lynch signed off on it. It's pretty upsetting to see, like, you know, your favorite like directors sign this petition for this, you know, obvious pedophile. So yeah, there's a lot of other examples. Also, Wes Anderson's on the list, so you know, that's kind of crazy to me. So you get the point. And so I see a work of art as its own entity, if that makes sense, but it is important to be aware of the terrible acts an artist commits when celebrating their work. So that's my main issue with the film, not the doo-doo eating and sexual torture, but the fact that whenever this film is brought up in videos and documentaries, the character of Pasolini is never mentioned in context with the film. I bought the Criterion release of Salo at Barnes & Noble. Yeah, I just find that funny that a highly controversial film like Salo or the 120 Days of Sodom can be bought at Barnes & Noble. Like I literally just walked in and I was like, oh, Salo, you know, I should probably get this because it would be kind of weird. Although I would mention that every time I go to Barnes & Noble's to check the Criterion section, I never find Salo again. So I don't know if like people are buying it quickly or is that a print or just Barnes & Noble just doesn't want to sell it. But yeah, but I also see Pink Flamingos there too. I also bought Pink Flamingos from Barnes & Noble, so you know, that's very interesting. You can buy like these films in like public store, you know, especially because they're banned and like highly like disturbing. But anyways, I also want to mention like how brave the performances of the actors who portrayed the libertines of the film, because they really do come off as creepy and disturbing, man. Like, great actors, great job. Although due to the controversy of the film, the 4 actors did not return to dub their characters, who were dubbed by uncredited actors. Pasolini's father was a fascist, so I guess that's where his hate began. Salo was intended to be the first entry in the Trilogy of Death. Pasolini previously made the Trilogy of Life, which incorporated a celebration of sexuality and romanticism, but the Trilogy of Death was supposed to be the opposite of those films. Pasolini planned on making the second film about a child murderer, I'm gonna butcher this again, Gilles de Rais, a French army leader from the 1400s. As for the doo-doo of the film, Swiss chocolate, broken biscuits, condensed milk, and marmalade, which was then squeezed through a plastic tubing, were used to make it. There's a funny story between like, a collaborator, friend of Pasolini, as he tried the chocolate on his sandwich and spit it out, which had the entire crew laughing. Because it did not taste bad, but like, I guess to him the visionary aspect, because it looked like feces, was hard to overcome. No sound was recorded during filming, as with most Italian films at the time. The sound was added in editing. Piero Pasolini only used wide angle and long lenses and never used normal focal lenses. This is more of a story, but the characters of the bishop and the duke are brothers, which adds incest to the terrible acts, so you know, there you go for that. Another thing about the story, one of the captive boys is the son of a southern judge and asks the judge for help, to which he responds that he may not be the one to deflower him. So, you know, I had to hear that, so I guess you did too. One girl is a daughter of a professor from Bologna. Oh my, I'm butchering this, sorry about this. Taken from a school by 2 nuns who were paid off. Before she could strip, she is not chosen because of her missing tooth. This scene strikes out to me as a minor imperfection saved her life, so the libertines were looking to destroy the most perfect humans to achieve their total anarchy. There's a scene where the Duke fondles and molests everybody in the scene, and you can see the actors like trying not to laugh. Like even the victims are trying not to laugh while the Duke just goes around fondling everyone. There's a scene where the doo-doo storyteller is getting ready when she hears planes fly over outside and she looks out to view them. This could be signifying the Allied planes, which signifies the war is coming to an end. During the doo-doo eating scene, they listen to what I believe to be Hitler giving a speech, but I don't have direct confirmation of that. Oh, another fun fact, the studs of the film have fake prosthetic large cocks, so you know, there you go. They're pretty comically like huge, I'm not gonna lie, they ain't no homo. Pasolini only told the actors and actresses the day of what they were going to be filming. One actress claims that they didn't know they were making a film so disturbing until they finally saw the final cut. However, there's like some conflicting thing, but this is going off the Criterion Blu-ray. Another actress said that a girl vomited in one scene, and that some actresses and actors questioned the scenes they were told to do, as they were disgusted by it. Another thing about the cast was mainly filled with non-professional actors and models who were willing to do nudity. The acts of torture in the end of the film caused some of the actors to suffer abrasion and burns. A little lighthearted fact, the crew played games of football with the crew that was shooting Bernardo Bertolucci's Novecento as the film was being filmed nearby. During filming, the crew would get threatening letters and they would eventually need police protection on set. Some film was stolen as mentioned. The set designer Dante Ferretti decorated the scenes with paintings that were banned by the fascists. Co-writer CT, who originally was supposed to be the director of Salo, mentioned to Pasolini while writing the script that he thought it was a bit too much. Another writer agreed with CT, but he kept it to himself as to not censor Pasolini, so that's kind of funny. Okay, now into some good old lost media. So there are some lost or deleted scenes, but to give proof that they actually exist, there's some set photos that exist. You can see some of it in the Criterion documentaries or in the Japanese poster. You see the girl in the electric chair, but I'll just go through all of them, I guess, that are mentioned that I could find, honestly. So here we go. I'm just warning you, some of these are, this is like, most of the lost scenes are at the end in the killing and torture scenes, but so just fair warning, you can click off the video right now that I'm going to go over some like really depraved stuff, but you know, if you made it this far, I'm sure you can make it through this. Anyways, one of the daughters are raped by a stud while the libertines watch. She is then whipped by the bishop and then killed in an electric chair. There's a scene where a victim named Sergio, who is branded, appears to sit on a low chair and then is shot. Another lost scene where the boy who got his eye cut out in the film gets his other eye cut out, then strangled to death using a garrote or something. It's like a chair that like chokes you to death. There's another scene with 2 other male victims that are killed by hanging. There's another scene where the Duke rapes a female victim, then gets her nipple teared off by 2 studs, so that's pretty brutal. One of the daughters is raped by another stud and killed by hanging. Another daughter is raped by a stud and also by the once victim turned guard, and then she is shot. The girl victim with the dead mother is killed by hanging, and this is probably really brutal. A scene where the bishop sticks pins in a girl's anus. So maybe that's best that's lost, honestly, but hey, whatever. A scene where the girl who is caught having sex with another girl tries to escape the castle but is followed by the 4 libertines and shot dead. She's famously, not famously, but she's like never seen after the scene where she's caught. So I guess that explains what happened to her. That's kind of a shame that that's taken out of the film. A girl victim is raped by the bishop. A scene where the banker libertine reads a poem is not present in the Criterion release, but is present in the BFI release of the film. There's an article written by the researcher at Criterion, and she concluded that the scene was not in the best print of the film used for the Criterion, but was present in the print made for the UK cut. No one knows why the scene is in the UK cut or why the scene is not present in the best print possible. So yeah, I guess the BFI is the full film, that all the footage that is left over, but it's not in the best quality, I guess. So, buyer beware, I guess. There are different endings were written but never used, such as where the four libertines discuss what they did, laugh, and walk away. In the Criterion Blu-ray, the documentary The End of Salo, they did a recreation of this, but the actors were pretty terrible, so it's kind of hard to focus on it. There's a lost scene where the cast and crew, including Pasolini, did a choreographed dance to a penguin in love that was meant to be for the intro. So, that would have been interesting, I guess. I'm not sure what Pasolini was thinking with that one, but I guess just to break the fourth wall, maybe bring some humor into it before, you just dive into hell, I guess. So yeah, hopefully the lost media can be found and put into a longer cut of the film. However, it is unlikely as no one knows where the stolen reels are, and there are also rumors that Pasolini purposely destroyed some footage. But who knows, maybe one day the footage can be found. So yeah, that's Salo, or the 120 Days of Salo. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. I love you.
One of my very favorite movies ever.